then started doing other things, right? Started solving harder problems, and that's what will happen here. Jobs will be gone, but then people will use that capacity to solve more interesting things and do more interesting things. So AI will take some jobs, but then new jobs too will be created, and those jobs won't be created for the sake of creation, right? They're supposed to be to add further value, to increase efficiency, to increase ease of use. But for me, what I'm very, very interested, or what I'm very, very excited about, is using technology for the power of distribution to tell our own stories to the world.
Let me take you up on that last bit you said, using technology to promote distribution. Right now, there are quite a few, well, I say quite a few, if you look at the numbers, Nigerian local companies who are trying to set up streaming platforms. Okay, there are few which have
Sure.
started, but then these these platforms or these persons have not, you would say, done so well, because you look at it, we have a country in the previous session that said population wise we're about 220 million, but then you look at the subscription base of these platforms, and I don't, at least the ones I have seen, do not even have up to 500,000. Okay, so from your perspective, now this is more as a venture capitalist, what would be your advice in terms of trying to grow? Because what these platforms have complained about is the fact that they do not have the funding in order to attract the big or the very good filmmakers, and of course they cannot attract the audience because they don't have the content. So what would be your advice in that?
Well, I've seen a couple. I've probably invested in about 130 companies to date, and obviously I've seen a couple in this space. I think the biggest problem is the consumer, right? You're competing with food. So it's either I eat or I pay my Netflix subscription. So what would you do? Um, and when you're, but you see the, the beauty about our industry and our market, and I tell people that investing in Africa today, forget Africa for today. If you're investing in Africa today, then there are so many reasons not to invest. But the bet on venture capital, the bets that venture capital makes, is that we'd have a digital first, a huge digital first generation. Many people in the room probably use the internet from the first time they could hold. Many of the young audience in this room probably use the internet from the first time they could hold a laptop, right, or could hold an iPad or a phone. Many folks, like myself, I didn't even use the internet till I was 12. A bank MD probably didn't use the internet till he was 35. A bank MD in Nigeria today. But the folks in here have used the internet since they could hold something. Give my daughter, a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, your iPad. They've gone to the store to buy something. That's digital first. They will get earning power, and they will do things. They will do things that way. So it's a slow burn. The bet was that it would happen quicker, but I'm still bullish that there's a, if you even think about it, consuming content on your mobile, for certain people it doesn't come to them first as natural. But if you meet any other audience lower than 20, that's their first medium, and that's their first medium to consume. And those people would, like I said, have earning power and be digital first. So sometimes we're in a hurry, right, and compare ourselves to more advanced markets. But it didn't just happen that way. Things take time. If you compare us to the Indian markets, the Latin American markets, we'll probably say we are 10, 12 years behind, and you can draw certain parallels to where they were and where we are now. And if we get some certain key policies right, and I guess maybe part of the things we'll touch on this panel, we can start to see that growth happen. But I think even platforms around with YouTube and so on online, you can see some of those views and you can see some of those subscribers. So the people there exist. There is need for that content. They need to be more. They need to be enabled. Pocket size need to grow, and then they will be able to consume those things eventually.
Thank you. Brenda, let me turn to you now. I know that the British Council has been very concerned in terms of growing the capacity in the creative industries. There was a report on education for the creative industries produced by the council, say, 5 years ago or more. Now, from your perspective now, in terms of the work that has been done, or in terms of what you were doing, this challenge we face about building capacity, do you see or have you considered the role that technology can play in terms of now trying to improve this capacity, making the education more accessible for people?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, just checking if you were listening. So yeah, so for the British Council, when COVID happened, it didn't just happen to us as individuals. It happened to a lot of businesses. It happened to a lot of, and for the creatives in particular, it was very hard. And for us as the British Council, and as the government of the UK, you can imagine the impact COVID had on the economy, which I think those effects are still being felt today, And so, practically, we needed to find ways to continue to do the work we do and still have the kind of impact we have. And for people who don't know, the British Council is a cultural organization of the United Kingdom that works in the space of English language, culture, arts, and education, and exams. And a lot of what we do is we support interventions in country that help. For me, I work mainly with creatives, and quite quickly we were able to pivot, and look at what our offering was to the sector. So the first thing we did was to launch an e-learning platform. And so we commissioned African-based creative administrators and creative people who teach creativity to put together a curriculum, that works well for the continent. And then we put it on the platform. And when I joined the British Council, I inherited that platform. And I looked at it and I felt that it was a little too, it wasn't up to date. Yeah, it wasn't as interactive as it should be. And I'm really happy to announce that the formal launch of the new platform happened in July. We're now in second phase testing for it, but it now has an app. It's very interactive, and all of that. So it's just to show you that we're not just talking, but we're putting our money where our mouth is. And as I speak to you now, we have over 500,000 registrations on that platform, and it's spread across Africa. And I insisted on translations in French and in Arabic and in Aramaic because, of course, I work for Sub-Saharan Africa, which includes about 14 countries. So it's something that is a big focus, for us. Another thing was we moved our programming into hybrid delivery. So instead of trying to get a cohort of young creatives into a class, we moved everything online. And even though it sounds like an easy solution, you know that everybody talks about the youth bulge. Yeah, so targeting young people who have very short attention spans mean that you need to be a bit more innovative. And so we incentivize them, to be in class as well. Give them reasons to come, reasons to stay, reasons to start the program, reasons to finish. We just finished a film lab cohort, 60 people, and I only had one dropout, which is a really big deal. Yeah, that's a really big deal. We ended up having 59 people do the thing for 12 weeks where they were in class for 7-8 hours online. So there's a thoughtfulness around it to ensure that, even when you're coming into the class, you're engaged. And post the class, you're engaged as well. And all of this happened because the one thing technology does is also to give you capacity to reach more people. And we didn't want a situation where the filmmakers only came from Lagos and Abuja. You understand? And I'm really, really proud. We had filmmakers from Jos, we had people from Kaduna, and these films are now traveling the world. You understand? So technology really, really does a lot.
So, what kind of skills do they get in this program? And for the benefit of those here, how can people access it?
So the program is called Film Lab Africa. It's not unfamiliar to the sector because we launched it properly, and then when the films were ready, we did a private premiere at one other event earlier in September, August, I think. You know, and the program is called Film Lab Africa. It's a short film accelerator that's for it's a short film it's a accelerator for film and TV, and it's accessible online. The call for the next cohort will most likely go out in January. Um, it was really difficult filling the class the first time, um, and for the life of me, I don't know why it's difficult for creatives to want to fill forms and apply to things. But it has always been a challenge, and so it was difficult filling the first class. But at the moment, when you see the momentum that the project has gained and garnered, people walk up to me every day to say, I want to be in the next one. So definitely look out for the British Council. You will find all of the information you require from it. We make the effort to ensure that we share, into all the different subsectors across, making sure creatives are heard. But it is defined to a certain age group. Most likely under 35, we might be going lower for the next cohort because we really want to target young voices, people who are unknown in the sector who are trying to do something.
Thank you very much. Well, Mide, just so you know, I have not forgotten about you. This one's for you. I think one of the organizations that has truly a rich body of tools that people can count on is precisely Google. So, now, if looking at it from the perspective of the filmmaker and what we're talking about here, trading, can you point us generally to, you could say, what is there right now for the filmmaker?
Right. Thank you for the invitation. And my name is Mide. I do partnerships for Google in the creative industry. I think the speakers have sort of touched on that question a bit, but I'll just piggyback off on what the first speaker had mentioned, particularly around distribution. So we'll start with what tools are available now and what tools are sort of available now but would be more prevalent in future, i.e. AI tools or generative AI to be more specific. So when it comes to tools available now, I mean, YouTube is very prevalent, right? YouTube breaks barriers. YouTube break barriers. You don't need your distribution anymore as long as you have an internet connection, you have a laptop, you can shoot a film, and you upload that film or content on YouTube, and you can start getting views, right? I think the beauty of YouTube, and I'm saying this as an objective individual, I'm trying to say it as much as possible, not because I work with them, but the beauty of YouTube again is we can all agree that local consumption itself is not particularly great, right? We do not have internet penetration to the level that we would want it to be, right, if you compare to other markets, right? Also connectivity, the quality of the internet speed, etc. might not be great locally here, but the thing is we do have content coming from Africa, right? And if you look at a lot of content creators, and I use the word content creators not to refer to short form content or comedians, but content that is generated and consumed online, right? So that could encompass long form movies, it could encompass short form. I'm just using it broadly. So you have content from Africa and Nigeria or anywhere in Africa which is distributed via YouTube. You have a lot of consumption coming from outside of Africa, right? So yes, there is a gap here where you don't have a lot of consumers here because of the limits. But again, I think there was the case study of Mark Angel, who was a comedian. About 60-65%, please don't quote me on this, but 60-65% of their consumption was from actually Far East Asia, from Asia. You can imagine. Thank you. Right, there's that. And you can also look at, I'll use the example of music, for example, right? I mean, this is film I know, but if you look at a Burna Boy, for example, or a Wizkid or Davido or all of these guys, when you look at their back end, right, or whoever is managing their channels, you can see most of this consumption usually come from outside of Africa, right, particularly in Europe, which is something that has also sort of exported the culture, right? So from our content, our film, and even our culture, right, that has been exported. So YouTube, I'll say, is a very, very powerful tool. Beyond the export and distribution value of it, I think there's so much value on the platform that filmmakers or even content creators generally don't take advantage of, and I'm specifically referring to the analytics tool, right? So you will often get questions around, I uploaded this particular content. I only have 5 views. I have 10 views. I have this. What can I do? What can I do? Have all of those kind of things. So there's an analytics tool at the back end that you can take advantage of. Some pointers would include, look, do you understand your audience well enough? Right? What are the kind of content that they're watching? Right? What is the best time to actually drop your film? Right? I mean, if you're shooting a film for cinema, for example, if you have enough budget or you have the right partners, you're going to make a whole fanfare and a lot of marketing around um, um, your cinema launch or getting into cinema, right? And you have, all the stars and all that. The same mindset should also be for digital as well, right? Because you just don't upload and expect everybody to come, right? There's something called YouTube Premiere, which can also support your launch or how you go live or how you drop content on the platform. So there are different tools. I mean, and back to education, the thing is to learn about all of these things. You can learn about them on that same platform. It's an amazing environment, but the problem usually for platforms like YouTube is, well, not just generally learning online, is the learning environment itself is not like your traditional, maybe institutional learning environment, right? It's not pedagogical, right? In the sense that it's not structured in that way. So it takes a lot of discipline and commitment from the learner, right? I mean, if you're doing maybe film training in, I don't know, British Council or maybe the Pan Atlantic University, there's a flow. There's introductory course. There's this. You learn this. You learn. You don't have. You need to be intentional to actually sort of guide your own learning path on those platforms. But the good thing as well is the algo on the platform is as well can also guide you, because if you're watching a particular video, maybe you're learning a new skill on editing, the recommendations for the next video for you to learn will be based on your previous activity there, right? So I mean, not to go on about YouTube, but that is tools that are available now for distribution. There are also tools even for pre-production, right, for your script writing. And I'm going to go into generative AI right now. I don't think AI is here to take our jobs as creative. I do work for a tech company, but I'll say I'm 100% on the side of the creative. My background is in the creative industry before I got here. Um, we don't think AI is not here to take the jobs. I would say AI is here to make the process more productive and efficiency, like you mentioned, right? Give the example of a tool like Gemini, right, or ChatGPT, but I'll say use Gemini. Um, yeah, exactly. A tool like Gemini, for example, right? It's the important skill you need to learn in using tools like that is your prompt engineering. How are you communicating with that particular tool to support your own productivity? Right. I'll give an example. Over the weekend, there was a research work that I needed to review, a very long research, and there's something on Wednesday that I need to now make pointers about this. I literally uploaded that document in Gen AI, and I gave it an instruction: summarize this, give me the key points. What do I need to know? Right? It's going to respond, giving me something. Okay, if it's not good enough, I can always talk to it and say, okay, do you know what? Why don't you give me more about this? So generative AI is not here to take our jobs. I don't believe it's here to take our jobs, but if anything, it's here to support the workflows, productivity, right? You can collaborate around, even if it's script writing, right? How do you shorten those work processes? Something that could have taken you maybe 3 hours, right? How do you make that shorter, right? So there are other tools as well, right? I mean, ChatGPT, yes, is another tool as well. There's different other tools that you can learn from. So I think as creatives, we shouldn't have a mindset of being antagonistic or being against these tools, because, guys, they're here to stay, right? Internet came, when internet came again, there was a whole, I don't know, about that not being great. There was the time of the mobile phones. This is happening already. 5G, thank you. Another thing again is look at the speed at which these tools are also learning, right? And I think, I'm sorry if I'm going all over the place, but something I think education should not even fit into this is how do we now even improve our curriculums to support AI skills, right? I think that is where there's a gap. So even, because what I do really is looking for partners in the industry and how do we support them to train the ecosystem. Brenda does a lot more heavy lifting, creating a whole platform. We're just looking for the best guys in the industry. How do we support you guys, give you funding? So in the process of that, sometimes we review the curriculum, right? If it's maybe the music industry or the film industry, and we look at this, you don't see things around generative AI right there? How do you train people to even know the tools available for you, right? How do you, I think for creatives, again, like I mentioned, prompt engineering. So what we're doing currently is in all of our partnerships, how we come in to train people. And it might not be me, it can be somebody maybe in, I don't know, in England or far, somewhere very far, who has those skills and who can always train African students or Nigerian students, because AI is not yet, it's here, and it's only going to get bigger. So yeah.
Thank you. I like what you say about partnerships, and let me turn to Olumide on this one. Now, you said something about policies. You made a reference to policies. I'm going to link that to the whole notion of partnerships. We do need to focus also on the policies. We do need to put structures in place. But then the thing is, we are so fractured. Everybody is doing his own thing and so on and so forth. But in order to drive policies, we need to come together. We need to be able to form these partnerships. But it's not only partnerships to drive policies, but the partnerships also, because fine, these guys want to organize a training, but they don't have the funds. This other guy has the funds. How can we create those partnerships? I'd like you to speak to that, please. Those two angles. How can we grow such partnerships and perhaps indicate what the advantages would be?
Spot on, and it's a very interesting question. Again, I would bring from the tech ecosystem. So interestingly, like I said, I'd backed a lot of interesting companies in the tech space over the years, MoneyPoint, Piggyvest, Paystack, and the like. And I brought some of that thinking into the creative or the film market, and which was backing entrepreneurs first and backing interesting, capable entrepreneurs. So I went on to back the likes of Jade with Gangs of Lagos and editing Black Book. And going through that experience, it reminded me of the early days of the tech ecosystem. And even though the tech ecosystem is still early days, but then some group of people have come together to create think tanks. Some group of people have come together to work with government to create the Nigerian Startup Act, which is now fully passed, to say industry and government, right? Because I used to have this notion that we could, very, very blue-eyed and living in the sky, that we can out-entrepreneur our way out of anything, right? You can't. You out-entrepreneur your way out of bad roads to get to your meeting. So certain things still need to be done, and work with government to do that, and that's what the ecosystem did. Interestingly, I also now sit on the technical committee for IDICE, for the creative economy, and trying to spur more funding to these markets. But you see, funding goes where it's respected and taken care of, right? So if there was a company, again leaning on the tech ecosystem side, there was a fintech I know that on their Series B funding, so one of their raises, got pulled out because one of the regulators had sent 12 circulars in 2 weeks, right? So flip-flopping, investors not getting confidence. So investors look for clear waters. They don't look for turbulence, right? And it's then the onus is now on the players in that ecosystem. There is this notion people usually have that, hey, leave this government alone, they don't know what they are doing, right? Oh, what does this guy know? There's the arrogance of the entrepreneur, right, which needs to needs to step down, because that game guy that can't do anything, one pen and everything is done. So we need to be proactive in engaging with policymakers as an ecosystem, and that way you can, those one voice becomes two, becomes three, becomes four, and then they then have to listen. I think I'm seeing some moves also in the industry along those lines, and that should be encouraged. I think the more of that we see, right, the investors can then be fuel on fire, but they're not going to start the fire for you. It has to be done by the ecosystem players.
Thank you. Now, Brenda, you have had, or at least the British Council has had a lot of experience dealing both with government and dealing with the practitioners, the players in the field. So what would be your advice? Now, not just in terms of that we need to deal with government, no, but really we have to create that groundswell. What has been your experience in terms of the practitioners themselves, and what would be your advice in terms of saying, well, let's come together in terms of partnering and to make a difference, to change?
So, one of the biggest challenges, or rather, the biggest challenge between government and its citizens is, this lack of trust. And that lack of trust is generational, it's old, it's steeped into our systems. So every time you hear about government trying to do something, say something, you're always like, And even when it looks like they're doing it, you still be like, let's see if it lasts, you know. So there's been this huge, ginormous lack of trust. And at the British Council, we recognize it. And what we do is, in some ways, through the support and through supporting the ecosystem participants, we encourage. We encourage conversations, and we encourage. And at the moment, that's what we can do. It's really just about conversations. I'm really proud to talk about this. One good step that we're taking is the British Council and the Ministry of Arts and Culture are about to sign an MOU, and in just about 2 weeks or thereabouts. And basically, that MOU is going to be the guide on how we do more with the government to support the people. And because we know that there's been a lack of trust, we're standing there saying, I'm African, I'm Nigerian, I'm standing here asking you, the participants, to work with me as I help you work with government. And it might look like, why is the British Council the one doing it? Why not? Why not? Because you need to find where the problem is and see how you can support to help. So I feel like for us as the British Council, we recognize it and we're doing what we can, but of course within the limitations of being a United Kingdom agency. But in terms of the sector, it's very easy for us to sit up here and tell you, work with government, it will work and all of that. But the truth is, I say this everywhere I go, and you've probably heard it before, we're all the pioneers of this sector. And as far back as 30 years before now, and maybe 30 years into the future, we're going to be 60 years of pioneers, because this sector is not where it's supposed to be. And so we will do the things that pioneers do, the things that look like, what's the point? The point is that you're laying track for the future. That's what you're doing. So you will make an attempt to work with government. You will try. You will attend. You will participate. You will converse. You won't give it up, because nobody gave up and Nollywood was born. And if we had been given up, it would have still been in the dark. And if you know that this is where you earn a living, and your glory and all of those things, that nice things that you get from working in this sector, you will participate in whatever it is government is saying they want to do, so that you can start to build a voice and start to have, something to say. And always, always take them on anytime you see them on a panel like this, and ask them the right questions or the wrong questions or whatever it is, and all. But participation is the first step for everybody in the sector. The next thing is to educate yourself as well. So we don't have a cultural policy. I'm sure a lot of people don't know that. And then not only don't we have a cultural policy, we've not had a cultural policy forever. And it means that your livelihood is at stake, because there's nothing staked in law, that guides the way you work. And which is why all this flip-flopping he talks about, happens, because we don't have a cultural policy and nobody can invest. We don't have co-production treaties. We don't have the things we need. We don't have collection agencies that we trust. All sorts across the sector. So it's a lot of there's a lot that we need the government to do. There's a lot we need them to do. The cultural policy is being worked on right now. Thankfully, I'm on a committee that is speaking to it. But at the end of the day, we need everybody's voice. So, and I'm not trying to hail this government, but they've been the most progressive when it comes to arts and culture. They may not get it right all the time, and they may not even know, what is not and what is what. But first of all, I know that they're listening, they're trying, and that attempt, I'm not applauding it, but I'm saying that since they're trying, let's see if we can, add a little more. But what I'm saying to you is, you're a pioneer. You need to accept that. you know, the kind of wealth that you're imagining that you'll get from the creative sector is probably going to be for the next 3 generations after you. But you need to lay that track now so that that wealth can really happen.
Thank you. Actually, in the panel before this one, well, no, sorry, the penultimate one, there was actually someone from the government who spoke about some of these co-production treaties that are about to be signed. So that's actually a great step. Well, Mide, let me come back to you, to something you said. You indicated that, well, there on YouTube, for instance, there's so much, everything is there. It's just that people perhaps do not. Now, if I, a confused person, I want to learn about film, but I don't know where to start, what will be your practical tips in terms of maximizing the use of all this information that is there? Can one have something like that? Yeah, we say we're concerned about the gaps for the aspiring filmmaker who does not have access to education, but then there's this worldwide university which is supposedly accessible. Now, what will be your advice? How can I, you could say, curate the content I'm going to use to acquire that education? Is such a thing possible?
Very simple. Go online, maybe Gemini, and tell him that question. Help me get resources. I have no idea about YouTube. I've never done this before. What are resources I need to have? Get it. Give it that prompt, and you come up with.
Sorry, I mean, somebody may be interested in this. Now, can you phrase that prompt for us? What will such a prompt be?
I mean, not exactly this way, but the question you've asked around you want to. I mean, this is just an example. You don't know where to start from, right? It's this massive universe, and you're lost. But you want knowledge of YouTube, right? Maybe filmmaking on YouTube, etc., whatever it is. Give it that prompt, put it there. It can provide resources for you, right? And it's not telling you start here. It could give guidelines as well, but it's looking at that universe as well. You probably want to start with X, Y, Z, or you could actually just go the traditional routes. Somebody who's been there before, follow someone. You could shadow them, work with them online. One very good thing I actually like YouTube for, again, is filmmakers or even anybody at all sharing their own experience, right? They're telling you, this is how I started. You have those videos. So there's a lot of community development type training that happens on YouTube as a platform, right? So when you're on YouTube, try and go to the comment section, at least for the valuable ones, not the sorry, and the valuable ones. And I would also say, so there's YouTube Learning. It's also within the YouTube ecosystem as well, right? There you have a lot of educational materials, etc. There needs to be some work from your own path where you'd obviously have to look at which kind of materials or resources appeal to you, right? I mean, we're all different learners, right? So maybe a particular page or a particular individual, the way he trains, or the tools he uses, or his own style is something that you're a lot more comfortable with as opposed to somebody else. You might have to do that work of filtering through the system. Yeah, I think that's a very simplistic answer to it, but it's literally that simple. But the downside to free resources online usually is always number one. Exactly, that's the one. It's also, they usually cover the foundational levels, right? It's usually the foundational levels, which is, that's the trade-off, right? It's free, so it's the foundational levels it covers. But again, because this is creative industry, this is filmmaking specifically, there needs to be practical, advanced training that is required as well. So this is where partnerships also comes in. Partnerships with institutions that exist, right? We recently launched a partnership with, and I do agree, by the way, with this new government, at least making some action. To be honest, I think I'm a fan of the ministry. Don't kill me. I'm a fan of the ministry and the creative economy, exactly, because they've made some actions. Even getting people in the industry to speak, understand what the challenges are. They launched a platform called Clap. I don't know if anybody knows about that. Creative Leap acceleration platform. So we're partnered with them to, number one, onboard trainers across the creative industry, film, etc. Del York, it's is one of the partners that we're supporting on that platform. So what we've done is to support students who can access Del York on Clap, right? Or you can access Del York directly, right? So right now we have about 2,500 people who've registered. Del York is the one doing the heavy lifting. We're just supporting, mentoring, and also there'll be some training at the end of um, um, well, not just training, something like a capstone project. So maybe the top 10 students themselves, we sort of now pair them with mentors, practical experience, people who've actually done actual work in the industry. So yeah, I mean, it's always very important to have those type of partnerships that sort of, you're not just online alone learning, but again, there's also the physical infrastructure that is also very important.
Sorry,
so yeah.
when you say support, it means you're paying the fees for these students or what? Is that what you mean?
I don't
by
like when you
support?
put it that way. Like, let's say you're paying the fees, but I mean,
No, well, so no, I just want to understand. I think everybody
absolutely,
here will want
absolutely.
to
I mean, that's
understand what
exactly.
do
I
you
mean,
mean by
that's one of the
support?
ways we're supporting them, because one thing I also learned when I started this role is creative or filmmaking education is actually expensive. It's expensive. I would think it was filmmaking, yeah, this year. But I mean, if you're so we have, I mean, you have this. The job is ecosystem development. You have a budget. This is what you put it towards. Then you see a budget that is similarly massive, and you look at the number of people that will be trained. You're like, no, it doesn't work. So it's very expensive, right? So what we've done is, I mean, you go back. There's internal advocacy work that needs to be done, and saying, look, we need more money for Africa and all of that. We're supporting students in terms of providing. They don't have to pay any fees for their training, number one. Also, we are pairing them with mentors in the industry. We've done a lot more work in the music industry because we partner with, yes, thank you, with MBA Africa. We even supported about 10 of the students to go to our YouTube offices in London. So those kind of experiences, mentorship, training, and yes, it's not all of the students. It's to be a select number of people who would get that support from Google.
I fully agree with you. Education is expensive, especially
It is
film
very
education.
expensive.
And I think part of what is required is as those who receive this kind of support have to also give back in their own form of training. So that's key. Well, let's not hog the microphones here. Do we have questions? Sure, please go ahead.
So just to
Mike?
support you, oh, sorry. Just to support you, so I pulled up my Gemini Advanced, and I wanted us to practice one prompt from anybody in the public, just to see what kind of responses Gemini gives you for the simplest question. Yeah, so I
Putting
just
Gemini
wanted
to the test now, right?
yeah, we're going to put it to the test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, over to you. Does somebody want to provide a prompt?
Question.
A
And
question?
we can design a prompt.
We can design a prompt. Sorry, I can't see too well.
Yeah, the lights are
Yes,
a lot.
there's a hand up there. Please go ahead.
Isioma, who gave you the mic?
Wow.
It is, but AI is good for that. It will tell you what you've done wrong. So who is a Nigerian? Yeah, you can see that. Yeah. All right. So a Nigerian is a person who is a citizen of Nigeria or has ancestry from Nigeria. And then it goes on to enumerate citizenship-based civic nationality, diverse origins, large population, rich culture. If I take one, diverse origins, Nigerians come from over 250 different ethno-linguistic groups, each with its own languages, cultures, and traditions. Rich culture, Nigeria has a rich and vibrant culture with diverse art forms, music, dance, literature, and cuisine. It now goes on to give you another prompt. So that's what generative AI does. So for Gemini in particular, it says, do you have any other questions about Nigeria or Nigerians in general? I'll be happy to help.
Just to add to that, so you could also go further by providing more context. So I mean, there's probably a reason why you're asking that question. For example, maybe you're going to Saudi. Okay, who said embassy?
To the embassy. Oh,
Okay, right.
sarcasm.
I mean, maybe you're traveling, you're going to, I don't know, South Africa or something. How do I introduce myself as a Nigerian to a South African? You could give it that. It would also frame the response. So it's learning as well. It's not a perfect tool, but again, it's always based on your own input, right? And you can always I think it's always important to provide context. And also something else is you can also tell it the tone you want it to happen, right? Sometimes if you don't even know, you could maybe you read an article and you like the way this person sounds like. There's a guy called Ezra Klein, New York. He writes for the
New
New York
Yorker.
for the New Yorker, right? I think he's a brilliant writer. You could take maybe an example of his article, put that up, and I'm not saying you should go and copyright anybody's content, but you put that and say, look, I want it to come in this particular tone. So I think it's a iterative process,
Yeah.
you know, and it gets better over time.
Yes.
But most importantly, it's a collaborative tool. It's only going to support productivity. And again, and I think it's now the responsibility of government now to have those guardrails around responsible development of these
Exactly.
tools and even the implementation of AI tools. So yeah.
Right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I see a hand far
Who's up
back
there?
there. There's a hand at the back. We'll come to you in a moment.
Hi,
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Anita. I'm a film student at Pan Atlantic University. So my question was, Mr. Mide mentioned that the education from the regular institutions is like very linear, sort of having an introduction. So what would you prescribe to let's say leaders of these educational institutions to make the education they give less linear, to make it more would you say interactive or more like how they can apply it, how the students can apply it like in real time. Thank you.
Is Anita shading her teacher?
Her grades are in danger right now.
But I mean, that's interesting. That's a
Yeah.
interesting question. I mean, this is maybe an opportunity to talk about. Prof and I actually we've been speaking, right? I think we've had two conversations right now around collaboration, right? Institutions, traditional institutions like PAU or universities have their own strength, right? You have the brick and mortar structure, you have a curriculum development expertise that they have. Um, but again, the strength of the industry, right, is you have people who have real you have people who have real life experiences in developing films, right? Practical experiences. The risk of, or not the risk, institutions sometimes tend to not update or follow current trends or update the curriculum based on what is currently happening. But when you have partnerships like that, it can always help that, right? Because you have, I don't know, if it's a filmmaker who's, you know, supporting the particular institution in developing a curriculum. Before you're even talking about curriculum development, you can have things as small as workshops, right, in those institutions. And I'm sure PAU is an institution
It's
that
a little
does
more
that.
forward, yeah.
Exactly, it's very more forward
More
thinking.
forward.
Well, she said it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is I think the it's collaboration and partnership. So there's the institutions, you know, there's the tech companies as well, organizations. There's also the industry itself, which is maybe the creative or the filmmakers. What the tech would bring to that is some of these new cutting edge tools, right? Maybe it could be a cloud-based tool, for example. If you're an editor, I think there's a particular tool called Frame.io. I mean, if anybody's an editor here, is within the Adobe ecosystem,
Family.
right? Exactly, that Adobe family where you can collaborate with, you know, different people, a director, a producer, editor, etc. Right? So tools like that can be deployed in your training. So it's just that three-way collaboration: the institutions, the tech companies, and also the filmmakers with practical experiences. I think that is the way to make sure that everybody's moving at a good pace and we're not just left behind.
If I could add,
Please.
so at the British Council, we're working actively in curriculum development. We have different programs. There's one called IAU, it's an intra-African university collaboration, which I'm very certain PAU is part of, you know, and then we're doing all sorts of things. However, you know, when he said you can't be competing with food and Netflix. So when you're looking at education, when you go to a primary school education, it's in it's in its worst state, you know. So we tackle, you know, as problematic as it is. By the time you're getting to university, there's a bit of a structure. Yes, some schools don't have it all, but there's a basic education that you get. But in primary school, it's really, really, really bad, where you have children under 7, you know, not in school, with having the highest statistics in the world coming out of Nigeria. So when we're dealing with curriculum, we start to deal with the biggest problems first. But that's something that I know we're working on seriously. And I didn't just say it that PAU is ahead. My daughter graduated from PAU 4 years ago, so I know that the curriculum is a bit better than what is the standard in a lot of federal schools. Just to say that you're getting a good education, Anita. Don't worry too much. Don't worry too much. And if I was going to add one thing, you being here today is you furthering your education in a more practical way. So if you were going to do anything, would be encouraging maybe groups of you to go to festivals like this as they come along. Actively seek them out so that you have access to all of these free workshops, free masterclasses, free things. And your professor is here, he has seen it. So you can encourage and say, is there any workshop existing outside of campus in the next couple of weeks that we can all go to as a class or something? And then you can decide to work it out yourselves, within yourselves as a group, to do that. But that's the best way. In this sector, because of the lack of formalized education, apprenticeship is the way people learn. Everybody in this sector, and I mean everybody, learns it from someone else. You understand? Very rarely do you find the ones that have a formal education in, what do I do? Head of arts. There's nothing like that in school. Nothing. So you need to do a lot of your own self-development as well.
Thank you. We have another question here.
Thank you. My name is Lawrence Akade. I'm from Pan Atlantic University. And actually, she's my student, and I'm concerned for them because of what what her parents would think, especially when you say that you are going to university to study film. My father, when I said I was going to study music technology, every time my father comes to me, keep asking me, what will you do when you graduate? When you graduate, till I finish. So the same thing that is happening with the student, because studying film, BS in film, just started with the new curriculum of CC Maths. So a lot of students are concerned also about that. And I want to ask you a question specifically about what is the British Council doing in supporting the study of film, not as apprenticeship, but in a formal education. What are you doing to help so that this student will feel like, yes, instead of going for a workshop outside, can't you come inside and do something with them so that they know that, okay, they're also, people are thinking about them. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. As you know, we're an agency of the United Kingdom. That's who we are. And you have to remember that our priorities are set by the king and his government. So I can only do within the parameters, of those priorities, which is peace and prosperity, really. And we support peace and prosperity through some of these initiatives. But as the head of arts in Nigeria, the first thing was to do a wide-reaching program for the entire sector. However, we limited it to a certain age group, which includes the ages of students in the university, considering the youth bulge in Nigeria, where 75% of us are still under 25. But the idea of working formally with schools, like I said, we do have a unit that works directly with schools, and there's a higher education unit. So what we can do is start to have another conversation about how to support these things. But within my remit is these opportunities for, would I say, long-term workshops. So my workshops are 12 weeks. Sometimes they're 6 months. It depends. And they become like a class outside of, what you can. And then another thing I do is support face-to-face delivery of the e-learning platform, because, of course, we still have internet issues. So I can't tell you how many thousands and hundreds of thousands of pounds I've invested on the African continent to ensure that people understand the business of creativity. My program sits in the University of Khartoum before the war, sat in Blue Crest University in Ghana, the university in Ethiopia as well. But don't forget that you also have very, very close structures. It's very difficult to break into the university to have a conversation. Talk less of saying you want them to help to amend your curriculum. It's a long conversation. So that's another thing that internally, you guys need to have a conversation about. I've tried to work with universities for the last 10 years, and it's been very difficult. I offered subsidies in terms of sponsorship for people to apply for grants. I've offered a lot of things, and sometimes
You
it gets
did not come to us.
you. Yeah, you are rich.
You see, that's the misconception.
PAU,
We
you
are
are
very
rich.
open.
You are rich.
You
But I
see?
worked with a lot of federal schools, and it was very difficult trying to, get them to allow their students to participate. So I'm really happy, yes, I'm really happy that you're here, as even just as an example, to others, where when eventually post-events they're talking about it. I hope that there's a good mention of what PAU has done by participating in sector events, so that others can, you can lead by example. Because that's another problem. You can design a program and think, let me go and talk to this university. As you heard, I talked about Khartoum, Ghana, Ethiopia. I've not been able to get a program into a Nigerian university, but now that you have said you're here, so I'm ready, but if you understand what I mean. Yeah, so that's also part of the challenge as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I think our time is just about up here. So we'll just take one final point. Let me start with Illumine. One final take home. Sorry? We still have time? Oh, okay, good. So, please. This is from
President
Me.
of our committee.
No. I'm not wielding my power negatively. No, at least not today. Okay, so my comments, it's kind of a comment and a question. Off your point, Brenda, we actually really wanted to have the NFI to be on this panel, but just coordination and all of that, it got a bit difficult. Hopefully we'll bring them in next year. But what a lot of people don't know is NFI actually produces some of our top talents that we have. So Kenneth Giag, Bishop, the cinematographer, a lot of them went to NFI. So for those of you that don't know NFI, that's the Nigerian Film Institute in Jos. However, they are severely underfunded, and yet they are producing some of our top talent. So this question goes to all of you. You, Brenda, as an institutional sponsor, and I guess Google, you sort of have that same role. And then you, Olumide, from the IDICE perspective. How are we looking at taking an NFI that clearly shows potential as this government school that is delivering top talent but clearly needs funding to be able to scale and deliver more talent, and also to be able to to equip their students to be able to provide skills in the 21st century. So what is the plan for IDICE in terms of dealing with that and supercharging that? I've had certain conversations with the ministry. I don't want to go into that, around some of the ideas on how they want to do that. But I think that this is an all-comers affair, to the extent that there's a role for the financing, there's a role for, DFIs like British Council, and there's a role for companies like Google in working to calibrate some of these institutions that clearly have potential but are suffering under, some structural challenges and financial challenges.
If I was going to say anything, your narrative matters. It matters a lot. And for an institution as old as the NFI, they're lacking in that, in setting their narrative and setting it properly to who needs to know and who needs to be there. At the moment, basically, I have been spoken to by three representatives from PAU. So they're in my face now. I'm going to remember them. Yes, I won't. And then they're probably going to get my number. I'm going to get theirs. And then we're going to start having a conversation. But NFI is not here. You understand? They're not here. So there's also the responsibility of your narrative that needs to get into the hands of the right person. 220 million people. That's the problem. We're a lot. We've got so many problems. And I'm not a magic bullet, I'm only here as a support organization to support creatives in my own unit, So, and then there's a lot that my other colleagues are doing in education, in all of these and all of that. So there's something to be said about owning your narrative and then setting your narrative at the right person. That one is not about money, honestly. It's not. It's about networking. It's about applying yourself. It's about deciding that, look, we're going to set ourselves up and get ourselves, the right kind of help that we need. Some people need to wave a flag to say, I need help. Some people are drowning and you can obviously see them and then you jump in and help them. So for me, my first answer will be, I don't have this narrative. You're the first person talking to me about it. And imagine how many people I'm talking to about different kinds of things. So I will take that one. But now that you've said it, I'm going to add that to whatever planning I'm thinking about. But hopefully, somebody here goes back to NFI and say, you guys, you need to talk to, the right kinds of people to see where and what can happen.
From this side, it can be a bit tricky for organizations like, and you understand this, Yama, like organizations like Google funding government directly or any government-owned institutions or agencies because of internal policies, right? It's most likely never going to happen. Usually, maybe just finding creative partnerships, right, with these institutions that doesn't directly involve maybe cash transfers, right? It could be, I don't know, some technology deployment, supporting students, so things around those areas. Normally, I mean, we've tried to partner with, federal institutions as well, plus one to our comment on that. It's been difficult, and the challenge where we actually stopped a lot of the conversations was these institutions were asking for, some cash transfers that would always go towards maybe infrastructure development, etc. And because of our own internal policies as well, you can't do that. That sort of limits it. But I mean, there are always creative ways that might not maybe directly involve cash, but again, like I said, technology, tools and deployment of those tools to support students. So yeah, I mean, they're always. It's a good point, and just in the spirit of never say never, it's something that definitely we can explore. But again, around cash transfers, it's a big red flag. Generally, yeah.
I believe one of the key drivers for iDice, right, was private capital would not necessarily go to certain places because of the return that private capital seeks. And the iDice program is then saying there's the part of funding. So we are going to fund a film fund and a tech fund, and we'll match you, right, and we'll provide a stop loss. So I know that you typically not fund a company in Kaduna, but go ahead and fund this company if you think they're interested. We'll provide you a stop loss on this fund, and that catalyzes investment into those markets. So there's the key mandates around funding, but then there's also a key mandate around skills transfer and empowerment of hubs and institutions. So you'd have seen an RFI from the iDice to universities, inviting universities to submit proposals on incubator hubs and so on. I'm not sure if the NFI participated in that,